Today, Donald J. Trump found guilty on 34 counts of illegally trying to cover up payments to porn star Stormy Daniels to stifle her claims of an affair with Trump. And thus, prosecutors in deeply Democrat New York City said, interfere with the 2016 election. And there is no getting around this fact. This is absolutely historic, but not necessarily for the reasons that are being touted in much of the media. Yes, this is absolutely the first time that a former president has ever been convicted of a felony. It's wild stuff. In the American legal system, American politics have now moved into seriously uncharted territory. Again, a former president charged with bookkeeping crimes from a decade ago. And have no doubt that he would never have been prosecuted were he not running for president, and in the process threatening the Democrats' hold on the White House. I'm going to walk you through just how political this all is in a moment. But first, let's have a look at what Donald Trump had to say about the verdict after it was handed down.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace.
So if they thought this case, this verdict, would get Trump to finally back down, well, not so fast. Now, let's go through a few things about these charges. Number one, Donald Trump is no ordinary former president. He's not off writing his memoirs. He's attempting a comeback, and he is still in the box seat to win back the White House in November. Number two, this prosecution here is one of 4 attempts by prosecutors to take down Trump, to damage him, possibly incarcerate him, and certainly try to make him an unviable candidate in November. I mean, again, it is absolutely extraordinary that Trump was charged for this. Seriously, covering up an affair in politics is somehow subverting an election? If this was true, they would have locked up Bill Clinton and a million other politicians and thrown away the key years ago. And speaking of Clintons, the crux of this case, that a payment to get Stormy Daniels to shut up about claims of an affair with Trump was funneled through a lawyer and not entered right into the books, well, this crime, alleged crime, convicted crime, is precisely what Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign paid a fine for when she was caught out using her law firm, Perkins Coie, to pay for the notorious Steele dossier that claimed Donald Trump was a Russian agent and much else besides. A document that I think was probably a far greater attempt to subvert an election and attack our democracy than any attempt by Trump's people to cover up an alleged affair. This, of course, being something else Hillary Clinton would have had a fair bit of experience with via her husband Bill, who, as Hillary herself once said, was a hard dog to keep on the porch. But let's get back to the Get Trump effort. This whole thing has been clearly coordinated by the Biden White House, the Democrat Party, and proxies such as George Soros to knobble Trump's chances. There's tons of direct evidence for this. For example, in the classified documents case, Julie Kelly from Real Clear Wire has reported that, quote, top Biden administration officials worked with the National Archives to develop special counsel Jack Smith's case against Donald Trump involving the former president's alleged mishandling of classified material, according to recently unsealed court documents in the case pending in southern Florida, unquote. And we also know how the prosecutor in this case, the hush money case, District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who is more than happy to let violent criminals run loose on the streets of New York, explicitly ran on a Get Trump ticket. Members of his team were part of the Democratic political machine. One even worked for Barack Obama. And we also know that Judge Juan Merchan has strong links to the Democrats, and his daughter does tens of millions of dollars in work for Democrat Party clients. But there is a final point here that absolutely cannot be ignored. and that is this. Remember, when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, it was the left, the Democrats, who launched a full-court press to deny the election against the legitimacy of what they now call our democracy. That Steele dossier I mentioned before was an entire effort to prove that Trump occupied the White House illegitimately. Hillary Clinton herself said it. Trump is not legitimate.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did.
Yeah, so she lost not because she ran a lousy campaign or she was unlikable. He was just illegitimate. So since then, the Democrats, the left, have been trying to delegitimize Trump ever since that occurred. And as such, there's kind of a neat circularity here with this verdict. I mean, it's, in a sense, the Clintons finally getting their revenge, using, of all things, claims that trying to shut up an ex amounted to election interference. You can't make this stuff up. The Democrats are going to run hard on this, obviously, and say, oh, how can you vote for Donald Trump? He's a felon, 34 felony convictions. But in the end, it may not matter. In fact, I don't think it will. It is not hard to see how Trump will, in fact, and he's already started, to spin this into a win. The guilty verdict plays directly into Trump's narrative that the Democrats are determined to shut him down by corrupting the courts and distracting the country with show trials, as opposed to, running a candidate who is not moving through the early stages of dementia at a rate of knots, or selling policies that stop the endless influx of illegal immigration, the endless upward spiral of prices, and the endless downward spiral of endless wars and global conflict. Remember, here is what Americans are saying outside of the Trump trial about what life is like under Joe Biden.
People are struggling. We have to help people extra with groceries, gas prices.
How do the prices feel to you lately?
High. Food is a lot more expensive.
Most normal people are pushed out of buying.
Whether housing, whether you're renting, everything's increasing.
Oh, it's outrageous right now. At this point, we're saying that we're probably not going to be able to move.
Rooney won't vote for Biden again.
I can't. I don't trust him with the economy. My son's in the Army. I'm angry about Afghanistan, about that withdrawal. So honestly, I can't vote for him.
So given all this, it's no surprise to me that despite all the media outrage, during the trial, polls did not move.
But apparently it's 44 days. You cracked the numbers. You've run the numbers. All right, let's take a look here. Think Trump did something illegal in the New York hush money case. I've been interested in whether or not these numbers would change at all during the course of this trial. Simply put, John, they have not. Pre-opening statements think Trump did something illegal, 46%. After the direct examination of Michael Cohen by the prosecution, look at where we are now, 46%. The percentage of Americans who think that the charges are very serious, in fact, dropped from 40% to a little bit more than 35% during the course of this trial. So, yes, perhaps things might have changed with those 12 jurors, but when it comes to the larger American public, there has been no change, at least so far, John.
Gee, I wonder why Americans haven't been buying into this. Maybe it's because they see the trial as a political show trial. Maybe they see it as a distraction. But I would add one more thing. I think they also see Democrats as being caught in a paradox of their own making. Consider this. If Trump is really so awful, if he is really such an absolutely existential threat to democracy, America, the world, if all the stops must be pulled out, getting rid of judicial integrity, media fairness, everything else, to make sure he doesn't come back to power, why are the Democrats so determined to burn down the entire constitutional village in order to save the country, instead of simply doing the obvious, which is, instead of running Joe Biden, putting up a candidate who is not falling apart before our eyes?